How's it going, everyone? My name is Swanee, and today I'm reviewing Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now, I'm going to be honest, when I saw the announcement trailer for this game, I kind of just rolled my eyes and didn't really expect much to come from an Indiana Jones game, especially since it was being published by Bethesda and has Todd Howard as the executive producer. I guess Starfield just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. My confidence in anything Bethesda related has kind of been a bit shaken as of late. And let's be honest, most video games based off of already established movie IPs can be very hit and miss. Now, there are a few good ones out there, like the Spider-Man games based off of the Sam Raimi movies. Those are really great, and I loved the Peter Jackson's King Kong game growing up. But for every good movie game, there's a ton of bad ones. So it also doesn't help that the past couple Indiana Jones movies weren't really that good. So my hype for Indiana Jones, and I feel like the hype just overall for Indiana Jones just hasn't been very high lately. Maybe that's just me. That, and I think the state of most modern video games have really just lowered my standards in general lately. Everything is full of microtransactions and battle passes, live services, and hell, even single player games have microtransactions now. And on top of all of that, it feels like every game now has some sort of political message that they're trying to force down your throats. And it's just modern gaming is just so exhausting. It's just so exhausting as of late. But with all of that said, I really liked Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I was honestly shocked at how much fun I had with this game. It honestly felt like it had the same charm and love as a good Xbox 360 game, but with all the modern technology.
Hello, little darling.
Ah!
Look, Dr. Jones. He's quite sweet, really.
More of a dog person.
I can really tell that the developers and everyone involved with making this game really love Indiana Jones because the attention to detail to everything is so spot on. Everything from the graphics to the voice acting, Indy's mannerisms, his personality, the fighting style, and even the movements of the controller and like the controller feedback does a great job of making you feel like Indiana Jones. I think if you're a fan of the Indiana Jones movies, obviously, and if you're a fan of ancient history, treasure hunting, and games like Tomb Raider or Uncharted, or even the National Treasure movies, I think this game is a must-have for you, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. So next, I want to break things down a bit. I want to talk about all the things I liked and a couple of things that I disliked about the game. So let's start with the boring part first, which is performance. Now, another big issue with modern gaming is that publishers like to push out their games a bit early, and they normally launch buggy, have tons of FPS issues, but to my surprise, the Great Circle ran pretty well. Now, I don't know if you've seen the PC specifications for the Great Circle, but they're absolutely ridiculous. The recommended specs for 60 FPS on high settings is an RTX 3080 Ti graphics card. That's insane. And if you want to play on Ultra, they recommend you have an RTX 4080. Yeah. Now, I have a 3090 Ti, and I played on a mix of high/ultra settings throughout my playthrough, and honestly, I only got some FPS loss in certain areas with like a lot of foliage and a lot of NPCs walking around in like the city and stuff. There was some choppiness here and there, but it wasn't really anything I could really complain about. For example, I was playing Stalker 2 last week, and it was basically unplayable until they had their first major update. The frames were dipping like crazy when I was playing Stalker 2, so the Great Circle is nothing compared to that. And I'm sure they'll probably have a day one patch to iron out a lot of bugs and things so I mean, you guys might not even experience some of the issues that I had, and I didn't have very many. Now, they have forced ray tracing on, so that's probably why they recommend having such a high GPU, and just because I didn't have very many issues doesn't mean you won't if you have an older graphics card, so just keep that in mind. And as for actual glitches, I think I maybe saw 3 glitches in my entire playthrough, and they were very small, like visual bugs. I think my first glitch was around 6 hours in, and it was just a record was on a table, and it got duplicated, so there was like 2 records. And then I think my next glitch happened at like another 10 or so hours after that, and it was another visual bug. So this is a surprisingly well-polished, bug-free game, which, let me tell you, was a huge breath of fresh air to play a new game on release that actually worked. And since we're on the topic of performance and ray tracing, I want to talk about the overall graphics and visuals real quick because this game is just beautiful. Oh, it looks so good. There are so many spots in this game where I just paused for a moment just to sit there and take in the scenery. I mean, just look at some of these locations. Yeah, they look really good. It's a real shame that there wasn't a photo mode included in this game because I could spend hours just trying to take pictures of some of the different scenery and stuff. And the cutscenes look so good. It felt like I was watching a new Indiana Jones movie anytime there was a break in the action. They did a great job with the facial animations and the attention to details on the skin and their outfits. And I have to talk about Troy Baker as Indiana Jones. He absolutely killed it.
Because a giant from the Vatican stole it from me, and I need to figure out why.
You're profoundly strange, Dr. Jones. The answer you give me stirs up more questions.
So don't ask.
And I don't think they could have picked anyone better. And what's crazy is that Todd Howard admitted that he didn't want Troy Baker originally because he felt that he was overused in the industry. I mean, we see Troy Baker in everything, so I kind of understand that point. And the only reason they chose Troy was because they did a blind taste test of all the different voice actors, and everyone kept picking Troy every single time.
This is where Forrestal cashed in.
Friend of yours.
A competitor. He was good. He was very, very good.
And that is really what sold it for me was the voice. Harrison Ford is iconic, and getting his voice right would have been make or break for me for an Indiana Jones game. But honestly, I felt like I was playing as Harrison Ford. It was crazy. So props to Troy Baker, and I'm glad they ended up going with him because he really knocked it out of the park. So next up, I want to talk about the world they created and how detailed everything is. Now, this is an action-adventure game above all else, and it is a very linear story-driven experience with some open-world elements. They put you in a location like Vatican City or Giza, and they have a bunch of different objectives and side objectives scattered throughout the area, and they let you explore and do them in whatever order you see fit. Think of a game like, I don't know, God of War Ragnarok or something. Big open environments with tons of side content, but then once you progress far enough in the story, you unlock new areas to explore. And every single location in the game is handcrafted. Every room is decorated and detailed. The loot is placed in specific locations that make sense. Every single location looks and feels unique. Now, I know Machine Games are the devs here, but it feels a lot like old school Bethesda is just kind of sneaking in, which is great. Now, I know Todd Howard said he always wanted to make an Indiana Jones game, so I'm not sure how much decision making that Todd was involved with, but everything feeling handcrafted reminded me a lot of Skyrim and Fallout, where exploring felt fun. And I love to explore in video games, and exploring in the Great Circle really scratched that itch for me. I really hated all the procedurally generated points of interest in Starfield. It was just so dull and boring. So seeing everything be handcrafted and everything looking unique, it was so nice. And I think one of the reasons that exploration feels so interesting and rewarding is because they tie your ability upgrades into the exploration. Now, you have to go out and find skill books if you want to level up and upgrade yourself. And if you want to unlock upgrades, you have to go out and discover new locations and discover points of interest with your camera and take different pictures and do side quests to get this currency that you need to level up. So you basically have to go out and keep exploring all the time if you want to keep upgrading Indy. So next up, I want to talk about the puzzles that are in this game. I was really impressed with the puzzles, and I like that they didn't hold your hand and treat you like a dumbass like most modern games do. I mean, did you see some of the pathetic puzzles that were in Dragon Age Veilguard? They were just so unbelievably pathetic. It's an immature game, but they gave you puzzles that act like you're 5 years old. Anyway, there were a few times in this game where I had to whip out a pen and paper or take a picture of my screen with my phone to figure out some of the puzzles. Some of the puzzles took me upwards of like 20 minutes to figure out, and it really felt engaging. Like out of my entire playthrough, I think there was one side puzzle I wasn't able to figure out. I tried it for like 30 minutes straight before I gave up and moved on. And don't worry, if you suck at puzzles, they have different difficulty settings, so they will make puzzles easier for you if you get stuck. And if it's a main story puzzle that might stop you from progressing in the story, you can just use your camera to take pictures of like the puzzle, and it will give you hints that will walk you through the puzzle if you want help. So I ended up really liking the puzzles, and they definitely get a huge thumbs up for me. I really thought that they were fun, and they did a great job designing some of the puzzles in this game. All right, so now I want to talk about the combat and the healing mechanics. First, let's talk about the healing and the food system. Now, you heal yourself with bandages, and you find them scattered pretty much everywhere. So anytime you take damage, you have to heal with a bandage. It's pretty straightforward, but what I really like is their food system. In the Great Circle, eating bread will grant you a temporary buff to your maximum health, and eating different fruits will grant you a temporary boost to your maximum stamina. So you find yourself constantly picking up food pretty much everywhere you find it. And there's actually some strategy to when you want to eat too. So normally before a fight, you'll want to load up on bread and different food items so that you have a bit of an advantage going into the fight. I think the reason I like this system is because it makes me actually care about eating food. They put the food in a cyclable like menu tied to the D-pad, so you just have to press down on the D-pad and you can cycle through all your food items and your bandages. This makes the food super easy to access, giving each food item an eating animation, and making food give you a buff made me care a lot more about eating compared to most video games. In survival games, for example, like Ark, eating just kind of feels like a chore, or in Skyrim or Fallout. I just don't really care about food or chems or potions, and it really breaks my immersion when I have to pause the game mid-combat in Fallout to shoot up 7 chems, and it's just not really that fun. But in the Great Circle, eating is in real time and it's quick and easy to access. So if I take damage, I can quickly hide behind some cover, eat some food to help keep me alive. Yeah, I think that's fun and engaging. So I hope that they take note of this and include it in future games, because I really enjoyed this this system with the food and the bandages and how they implemented it in this game versus other like Bethesda games, for example. So I went over healing and food. Now let's talk about just the combat itself. So the combat, it's just okay. I think it's probably as good as it could get for an Indiana Jones game, because, Indiana Jones isn't exactly Rambo. He doesn't gun down thousands of people in the movies, and he doesn't really use guns that much either. He only uses them when he has to. And normally Indy fights using whatever he can get his hands on, which they did a really great job of capturing that feeling in this game. Like, you find yourself constantly picking up objects to bash off of enemies' heads. Things like shovels or hammers or hairbrushes, you name it. And a lot of the combat in this game is melee based, so you do a lot of like blocking and punching and parrying and dodging, that sort of thing. And every time you hit someone in a combo, it does that like punch sound effect from the movies, which is pretty great.
Hit your distance, pal.
Pow, pow. I think it tricks your brain into thinking you're a badass, because every time I punch someone in the face or hit them with a shovel, it just felt so satisfying. So I actually, kind of enjoyed the melee combat. Now, the ranged combat, however, I didn't like as much. For example, I'd give the melee combat like, I don't know, an 8 out of 10 because it was kind of fun. But the ranged weapon combat, like using like guns and stuff, I'd give maybe like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. Now, using the whip is cool. It's kind of a ranged weapon. You can use the whip to disarm enemies and grab them and pull them to you. So I do like that feature. I do like using the whip, but the guns didn't really feel good at all. The balancing is all over the place with the ranged weapons, especially towards the end of the game. It's like the game wanted to like artificially get harder because you're facing high ranking Nazis by the end of it. And it just ended up being not very realistic when you shoot an enemy in the face 3 or 4 times and they still survive. In the beginning of the game, you use a lot of melee based combat, and then once you hit Giza, you start to use weapons pretty regularly. It's just some weapons are way better than others, and if you go in guns blazing into a camp, you can very easily get overwhelmed and killed. But I can't really show off any like examples of these weapons not working well in the late game because, you know, it's a late game area and the devs asked that I don't spoil that in my review, so I'm going to, you know, respect that and not show spoilers, but just take my word on it. Late game, there's enemies, you shoot them in the face, they don't die. It doesn't feel very good. So hopefully they like have a patch or something to fix that, or just balance it in some other way. It felt wrong. Now, stealth is a big factor in the combat. I wasn't really a big fan of that either. There's some aspects that were okay, like finding disguises was kind of cool. That was interesting, but the AI can be kind of dumb sometimes and pretty easy to manipulate. So you can either be extremely broken and overpowered in stealth, or you can kind of suck at it. And if you aren't smart with it, you can very easily like alert everyone all at once. And if someone screams or you trigger someone and they shoot a gun, then you'll end up having to fight like 10 enemies all at the same time, which can be a bit annoying sometimes. So the stealth is kind of all over the place. So some aspects of the combat I enjoyed, and others just felt a little off, but not enough for me to really like knock the game too badly for it. I think the combat overall is fine. It's just not amazing. It's just fine. So next, I want to briefly talk about the story. Now, I don't want to say too much because of spoilers, but I just want to say that I was actually very interested in the story and the plot, and I found it to be pretty good and engaging. Now, I really like the villain of the game, Imrich Voss, a Nazi archaeologist looking for ancient artifacts to help benefit Hitler. They did a great job of making him evil. Like, he was smart, he was an ass, he was normally always one step ahead, and they just made him really hateable, which are all great qualities that you want to see in a good villain.
We wouldn't want you to catch a sunburn, would we, Dr. Jones?
Now, in the story, there are some plot twists along the way that I didn't see coming. There's some scripted moments in the story that were really fun, and the ending felt good, and I was happy with how everything concluded. Now, I was honestly shocked at how invested I got in the story. Some moments I had a hard time putting down the controller because I wanted to see what was going to happen next. So that's all I can really say about the story without getting into spoilers. Just know that I thought it was good, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. If that was something you were worried about with this being a single player story driven game, I don't think you need to worry about that. I think it's really good. If you want a good story driven like single player campaign, I think this is definitely worth checking out for the story alone. So next up, I want to talk about some of the gripes I had with the game. Now, these aren't anything too bad or too serious, but I wanted to bring them up anyway, just for transparency's sake. I'm not just completely praising the game. And the first gripe I have with this game that I want to bring up is that you can't save the game. There is no saving in this game, and you can't have multiple saves. And you can't go back to any saves. There are just constant checkpoints that the game autosaves for you anytime anything happens. So if you die, you just go back to right before the combat happens. I know this might be a game breaker for some people, and honestly, it wasn't that big of a deal, but there were a couple of times where I missed a cutscene because my cat like knocked over something and I just didn't see what happened, and I wanted to go back, but I couldn't because the autosave feature. And I don't think this will happen, but maybe, I don't know, if someone's game is glitched or something and they need to go back a save, there just isn't an option to do that, and you're kind of just stuck with whatever the game decides to autosave for you. So I'm not a big fan of how the saving and autosaving works in this game compared to like most video games. Another small gripe I have is that I didn't really like the intro area that much. When you're in Vatican City, I think that part kind of drags on a bit if you like to run around and do all the side content and explore. But after you leave Vatican City, the game really starts to pick up and stuff. So it's just that beginning intro area I felt was a little bit slow, and it kind of started to drag on. But I think if you just rush through the story and skip some of the side content, and come back to it later, I don't think you'll have that same issue that I had. Another thing I wasn't a fan of was the currency system. You constantly run around and you're collecting money, you find it everywhere, but it doesn't really feel very rewarding because there just isn't really anything to buy. There's a couple story-related hurdles that they put in your way where you have to buy like a lighter so you can see in the dark, and you have to buy a like breathing device so you can breathe underwater. But outside of those scripted things, there just isn't really anything for you to buy, and there wasn't any reason for me to care about money in the late game. Now, I ended up having thousands of dollars with nothing to spend it on, which is kind of boring. I ended up just not caring about finding money at all towards the later half of the game. So I definitely feel like they should have added more things to purchase and interact with in stores and stuff. Now you can buy like books to like get some different skill upgrades and stuff, but there's like no way to purchase ammo or health, or I don't know. There just wasn't anything to purchase. So I didn't like the currency system. It felt like it was really lacking, and it felt like it was just kind of tacked on. So to end things out, I ended up really liking Indiana Jones and the Great Circle a lot. This might be a hot take, but I liked it better than most of the Indiana Jones movies. And it's one of my favorite games of this year. Now, I know I'll get some hate for this, but I liked it better than Black Myth Wukong. And I really liked Black Myth Wukong. Something about just the history, the exploration, the story, the puzzles really did it for me. And it probably won't be my game of the year, but I definitely could see how it might be for some people. And I'd say if I were to give it a score out of 10, I'd probably give it like a I don't know, a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10. Like, I don't really care about the end game that much because you just have to go around and find the remaining collectibles, and it's just kind of a one and done single player story. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Every game lately wants you to get addicted to their live service BS, and as I get older, I just don't have the time for every game to be live service now. It was actually nice and refreshing to just sit down and play through a scripted campaign again. I haven't done that in a very long time. So is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle perfect? No. But it did exceed my expectations, and I thought it was a lot of fun, and I hope this game does well so that they consider making a sequel with it. And with it being on Xbox Game Pass, you can't really beat that price. Like, this is a really good deal. And one more thing before I go, I just wanted to say that I love that there's no woke stuff. Now, I have a pretty high tolerance for woke things, but after seeing the latest Dragon Age, it felt so nice to have a game just tell a good story and not water things down or force an agenda on you. They actually talked about Nazis and showed swastikas, and it made the game seem realistic for 1937. The Nazis were actually looking for artifacts in real life around this time, so it was interesting to see how they built that into the plot. I don't know. I just respect the fact that the game treated me like I'm an adult and I'm capable of forming my own thoughts and opinions, and I'm capable of solving puzzles past a second grade level. It was just nice and refreshing to see that. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section down below, and let me know what you think of this new review style I'm trying out. This video cost me a lot of money and a ton of time, and I know the algorithm hates when you try to do new things, and so any and all feedback is welcome. Remember to subscribe if you're new here, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Cookie, you can just throw in some bloopers or whatever the fuck you want at the end. Here's me dancing.
Damn it. He's on to me.
Jesus Christ. The guy was already asleep, and I hit him so hard it broke his chair.
This teleprompter, I'm going to have to work out this teleprompter because it keeps fucking up. It's supposed to go as I read, and it's skipping ahead, and it's being stupid. Fuck. God damn it. This fucking teleprompter, man. Okay, this is so hot. I can't put into words how hot this is. But I do look good. I look pretty sexy as Indiana Jones, I gotta say.